because they could get thousands of dollars of gold for these people. So slave raiding became a major occupation in Florida, big time. Then Bluey, Christmas Eve, 1835, Christmas Eve, the Seminole tribe declared war on the United States. And it was Vietnam all over again. The poor army was equipped with 1812 muskets. They could shoot, if you were lucky, maybe 100 yards. The blacks had European rifles supplied by Spain, France, and other countries, wanting to stir up trouble in the United States. So the Seminoles were well equipped with weaponry, modern weaponry. Our army wasn't. Our army took a terrible beating in the Seminole War. We lost a lot of men to disease. We lost a lot of men to battles. The Seminoles won almost every battle, but they had a policy of burning the Seminole towns, destroying their foodstuffs. They set up a huge concentration camp in Tampa. They had steamboats to carry Seminole families up the Mississippi River, and they shipped them out to Texas and Indian Territory, which is another story entirely. But the plantation workforce was gone. You had Maroons, what they called the Maroons. These were families that had lived with the Indians for hundreds of years. Some were escaped slaves. They lived in small communities. You had the plantation slaves, which the best number we could come up with was somewhere between 935 to 1265. And that's estimated on a website, which is the University of Texas, called johnhorse.com. Pretty interesting. They did all the research of how many slaves revolted and joined with the Indians. They said that the largest slave revolt that ever happened in the history of our country happened right here in Flagler County. The slaves on these 20 plantations took off, joined with the Indians, and went to war. Now, some later were sent west as Seminole property, and others went up to the slave market and were sold in St. Augustine. But suffice to say, Florida was changed forever. Florida would never be the same. The plantation economy was wiped out. The people were chased out of Florida. Florida, these great enterprises, which would later become our county, were destroyed. I often speculate what this place would be like today if the Seminole War hadn't happened. What would be here? I think this would be a center of industry. I think there would be a lot of businesses here. There aren't, but there were once upon a time. Now, in 1842, you had the Armed Occupation Act, which basically said if you have a gun, then you can come down here and claim some plantation land, and if you can hold it with your gun, you can claim title. So we had many, many of what were later called crackers pouring into Florida. These were hungry men with tired, worn-out wives and a lot of children that would come here with their guns and claim a period of land, and if you could hold it, it was yours, but you had to defend it. The Civil War period arrived, and Florida provided cattle, salt, and men for the Confederacy. Now remember, there were a lot of these beautiful copper kettles. You saw one, I took a picture of it, lying out in the woods. When the plantations were burned, the copper kettles didn't burn. So they took them down on the ocean, and they would boil ocean water in these wonderful kettles and make salt. There were no salt mines here, but if you had infinite wood and you had plenty of labor and some nice copper kettles, you could make salt. So salt was a big product here, along with cattle. The old plantations were gone. Now we had new industry here. We had the primeval trees, which were here. They were giant trees, and they provided wonderful lumber. We had the railroad magnates came in here. Henry Flagler shows up with his Florida East Coast Railroad. We had the turpentine industry, which was immense. The last turpentine still was shut down here in 1950. But turpentine was a big product here. And lumber was a big product. Cattle was a big product. All of this is in the 1850s. The old plantations are gone. They've been divided off, sold, and forgotten. The Spanish cattle that used to run wild here no longer exist. We're in the potato business now. We're shipping potatoes on Henry Flagler's railroad. People are coming in here, making a lot of money, raising cabbages, potatoes, cattle, making a lot of money. Now I do Flagler bus tours. I've done them for 22 years, and we cover about 100 miles on the tour. It's not Disney World. We don't have any stuffed Abraham Lincolns or people in white rigs, and you have to use your imagination a little bit when we go down. So I try to tell the story of what was here, because there was great industry here. There were a lot of people here. There were a lot of black people here, a lot of slaves, and we don't know very much about them because there's no record. There's no written record of them. But I do try to tell their story. I've written a number of books. Osceola's a doozy. That's the Seminole War. Bulow Gold is the housekeeper of Bulow. And that's James Fisk, a buddy of mine, and that's a direct descendant of a slave that was on Bulow. His ancestor was a slave. So I try to connect the dots. I don't always have hard evidence. There wasn't much written, and I've tried all these years to take little bits and pieces and glue them together. And I think I'm on time. So that's it, folks.
And if you haven't done on it, it's really very good.
It ends up with a great lunch out at the Bull Creek Fish Pond.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much.